The morning sun touched the old wooden walls of the dojo as Hujin wiped sweat from her forehead. Her sword moved through the air like water, cutting invisible lines in the dawnlight. At 23, she was the youngest sword master in New Seoul, but that didn't matter much anymore. Most people thought swords were outdated, choosing instead to train with energy weapons or in virtual reality. But Hujin knew better. Her grandmother's words still rang in her ears. Steel teaches truth. A sword has no buttons to press, no batteries to charge. It is simply you, the blade, and what you can do with it. The dojo stood out among the gleaming buildings of New Seoul like an old photograph in a digital album. Its wooden floors had been polished by countless feet over 100 years, and the walls still held the marks of practiced swords from decades past. While hover cars zipped past outside and holograms flashed advertisements on nearby buildings, time seemed to move differently inside these walls. "Sister," the voice of her younger brother, Yunho, broke through her morning routine. The registration numbers came in. "We lost 3 more students this month." Heijin lowered her sword slowly, keeping her face calm even as worry crept into her heart. "How many does that leave us?" 12. Yunho's shoulders dropped. "Everyone wants to learn laser sword fighting now." Old Mr. Park down the street converted his whole martial arts school into a virtual combat center last week. Hajin walked to the wall where her family's swords hung in a perfect line. Each one had a story. Each had taught countless students over generations. She carefully wiped her blade before returning it to its place. "Grandmother always said that hard times test what we truly believe in," Hajin said, turning to face her brother. "Do you remember when she used to make us practice our strikes 1,000 times each?" Yunho smiled. "And she would say, 'Again,' even when our arms felt like they would fall off." She understood something that these virtual schools don't, Heijin said, walking to the dojo's entrance. She slid open the old wooden door, letting in the sounds of the modern city. Real strength isn't about pressing the right button at the right time. It's about understanding yourself, your limits, and how to push past them. As if to emphasize the contrast, a massive advertising hologram floated past their dojo, promoting the newest virtual reality combat system. "Experience the future of fighting. Why terrain for Luiars? Wherein you can be an aster in Noantes." Hajin watched the hologram fade away and remembered her grandmother's last days. The old woman had made her promise to keep the traditional ways alive, no matter what. "The world may change," she had said, "but the truth in a sword's edge never does." Later that afternoon, Heijin taught her small group of loyal students. While their friends played with shiny new tech and fought virtual battles, these few still came to learn the old ways. She watched them practice their forms, correcting a stance here, adjusting a grip there. Master Heijin called out the youngest student, a 12-year-old girl named Mirei. "My friend says swords are stupid. She says we're learning useless old things." Heijin knelt down to meet Mirei's eyes. "Tell me, when you first started here, could you hold the practice sword for more than a minute?" Mirei shook her head. "And now, I can do all my forms without getting tired." "That's not the sword getting stronger," Heijin said with a gentle smile. "That's you getting stronger. Real strength doesn't come from somewhere else. It comes from inside you. That's what we learn here." As the sun set on another day, Hujin stood in the empty dojo, looking at the family shrine where her grandmother's picture sat among burning incense. The city lights outside painted modern colors on the ancient wooden floors, but they couldn't touch the timeless spirit of this place. "I'll keep my promise, grandmother," she whispered to the quiet air. "No matter what changes come, the true way of the sword will live on." She didn't know then that the greatest test of her beliefs was already on its way, traveling through the stars toward Earth. The day the aliens arrived started like any other. Heijin was teaching her morning class when the sky turned purple. All 12 of her students stopped their practice to stare through the dojo's windows. Even the ever-present advertisements on the buildings outside flickered and died. "Everyone stay calm," He-Jin said, though her own heart was racing. "Continue your forms." But before they could return to practice, every screen in New Seoul lit up at once. The face that appeared wasn't human. It had pale blue skin and eyes that looked like polished silver coins. "People of Earth," the alien said in perfect Korean, "we are the Ryulian Empire. We have come to test your worth." Yun-Ho burst into the dojo, his face pale. "Sister, you need to see this. They're everywhere. Their ships are over every major city." He-Jin's students huddled together, their practice swords held tight against their chests. She walked to the shrine, bowed to her grandmother's picture, and picked up her family's oldest sword. "Class is dismissed for today," she said quietly. "Go home to your families." As her students left, the alien's voice continued to boom through the city. "We have studied your world from afar. Your weapons are primitive. Your ways are outdated. But we will give you a chance to prove yourselves." Outside, massive ships hung in the sky like metal mountains. They were smooth and sharp, looking more like giant swords than spaceships. Smaller craft zipped between them, their engines making a high-pitched whine that set everyone's teeth on edge. "The Ryulian Empire values strength above all," the announcement continued. "We will select warriors from your world to face ours in combat. These tests will decide Earth's future." He-Jin felt a chill run down her spine when a beam of light suddenly shot down from one of the ships, scanning the city. It moved like it was searching for something specific. "Sister," Yun-Ho pointed at the beam as it changed direction, heading straight for their dojo. The light swept over the old building, turning everything blue for a moment. Then a new voice spoke, this one sounding surprised. "Interesting. We have found a weapons training facility that still uses metal blades." 3 figures appeared in the dojo's courtyard in flashes of white light. They were tall and muscular, wearing armor that seemed to flow like liquid metal. Each carried what looked like a sword handle, but without a blade. The leader stepped forward, his silver eyes fixing on He-Jin. "I am Commander Tekro of the Ryulian Empire. Our scans show this is one of the few places left on Earth that still teaches real combat, not those digital games your people seem to love." He-Jin stood straight, her grandmother's sword held loosely at her side. "We teach the traditional way of the sword," she said. "I am He-Jin, master of this dojo." Tekro made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Master? You? Your whole planet has forgotten true combat in favor of pressing buttons and playing with light shows. How can you call yourself a master of anything?" He held up his handle, and a blade of pure energy burst from it with a harsh buzz. The blue light it gave off made the dojo's wooden walls glow strangely. "This is a real weapon," he said. "It can cut through any material in seconds. Your metal stick is nothing compared to it." He-Jin didn't move. She remembered her grandmother's words about staying calm in the face of those who bragged about their strength. "A weapon is only as good as the person who wields it," she said. Tekro's eyes narrowed. "Then prove it. Your facility has been selected for testing. Tomorrow, you will face one of our warriors in combat. If you refuse, your precious dojo will be destroyed as an example of Earth's weakness." As quickly as they had appeared, the aliens vanished. The only proof they had been there at all was a small metal disc they left behind, floating at chest height. Red numbers appeared above it. 24 o'clock, 00, counting down. He-Jin looked at her brother, then at her grandmother's picture on the shrine. "Yun-Ho," she said quietly, "prepare the dojo for tomorrow." It seems grandmother was right. The true test of our way would come when we least expected it. News of the alien challenge spread quickly through New Seoul. By morning, a crowd had gathered outside He-Jin's dojo. Some came to support her, others just wanted to watch. The floating timer now showed less than an hour remaining. He-Jin sat in the dojo's meditation room, her grandmother's sword across her lap. She had spent the night practicing, going through every form she knew. Her arms ached, but her mind was clear. "The crowd is getting bigger," Yunho said from the doorway. "And you should see what the aliens did to the courtyard." When Hejin stepped outside, she understood what he meant. The simple stone courtyard where she usually practiced had been transformed. A perfect circle of metal now covered the ground, and floating lights marked its edges. Above, one of the alien ships hung so low it blocked the sun, casting everything in deep shadow. "They're making quite a show of this," Hejin said quietly. Tekro appeared in a flash of light, along with 20 other Ryulians. They all wore their flowing metal armor, but now Hejin could see the differences in their rank markings. Some had silver stripes, others gold, and Tekro's armor had both. "Your time for practice is over," Tekro announced. His voice carried easily over the murmuring crowd. "Now you face a true warrior of the Ryulian Empire." A female Ryulian stepped forward. She was shorter than Tekro, but moved with the same confident grace. Her armor was simpler, with just one silver stripe. "This is Kira," Tekro said. "She is a new graduate of our combat academy. We thought it would be fair to match you with someone of lower rank." The crowd muttered angrily at the insult, but Hejin kept her face calm. She watched Kira activate her energy blade. This one glowed green instead of blue. "The rules are simple," Tekro continued. "Fight until one of you yields or cannot continue. Step outside the circle, and you lose. Try to leave before the match ends, and your whole city pays the price." Hejin stepped into the circle, feeling the strange metal surface under her feet. It was slightly springy, like a training mat. She bowed to Kira, who looked confused at the gesture. "Why do you bow to your opponent?" Kira asked. Her voice was younger than Hejin expected. "To show respect," Hejin answered. "Every fight is a chance to learn, both from victory and defeat." Kira frowned. "There is nothing you could teach us. Your weapons are primitive, your methods outdated." Hejin took her starting stance, holding her grandmother's sword in both hands. "Then this should be a quick lesson." The fight began with a burst of movement. Kira's energy blade hummed through the air as she attacked with incredible speed. But where the alien's moves were direct and powerful, Hejin's response was smooth and circular. She didn't try to block the energy blade. Instead, she simply wasn't where the attacks landed. "Stand still and fight," Kira shouted after a minute of striking nothing but air. "I am fighting," Hejin replied calmly. "You just haven't seen it yet." She continued moving in circles, her feet making patterns on the metal floor. The crowd watched in confusion. It looked like she was just dancing away from Kira's attacks. But Yunho smiled. He recognized what his sister was doing. "She's tired now," he whispered to himself. "Watch what happens next." True enough, Kira's attacks were getting wider, less controlled. Her breathing was heavy, while Hejin hadn't even broken a sweat. That's when Hejin changed from defense to offense. It happened so fast that many in the crowd missed it. Hejin stepped inside Kira's guard, her sword moving in 3 quick strikes. She didn't hit the alien with the blade. Instead, she struck Kira's wrist, elbow, and shoulder with the flat of her sword. The energy blade clattered to the ground, deactivating instantly. The courtyard fell silent. Kira stood frozen, her arm hanging useless at her side. She stared at Hejin with wide silver eyes. "How?" she started to ask. "Your weapon is powerful," Hejin said, stepping back and bowing again. "But you rely on it too much. True strength comes from within, not from our tools." Tekro's face darkened with anger. "This proves nothing. Kira is just a beginner. Tomorrow, you will face a real challenge." As the aliens disappeared, Hejin picked up Kira's fallen weapon and set it gently on the metal ground. But before the last Ryulian vanished, she noticed something interesting. Some of the younger aliens were whispering to each other, looking at her with curiosity instead of scorn. That evening, Hejin couldn't sleep. The dojo felt different with the alien ship still hanging above it like a metal cloud. She went to the training hall and found Yunho there, cleaning the floors. "You should rest, sister," he said. "They'll send someone stronger tomorrow." "I know," Jin replied, picking up her practice sword. "That's why I can't sleep." As she started her night practice, a soft blue light filled the dojo. Jin spun around, sword ready. In the corner stood Kira, the young Ryulian she had defeated that morning. The alien warrior raised her hands to show she was unarmed. "I'm not here to fight," Kira said quickly. "I came to ask how you did it." Jin lowered her sword but stayed alert. "Did your commanders send you?" Kira shook her head. "They don't know I'm here. They're too busy arguing about how to defeat you tomorrow." She touched her shoulder where Jin had struck her. "No one has ever beaten me like that. You didn't even try to hurt me." "Hurting wasn't the point," Jin said. "The point was to show you something." "Show me what?" Instead of answering, Jin walked to the wall and took down 2 practice swords. She threw one to Kira, who caught it awkwardly. "This is too light," Kira complained. "And it's just wood." "Perfect for learning," Jin said. "Take your stance." Kira activated her combat suit's training mode, making it glow softly. She took what she thought was a perfect fighting stance. Jin walked around her, looking carefully. "Your weight is too far forward," Jin said. "You're ready to attack, but not to move. Try this." For the next hour, Jin showed Kira the basics of traditional sword fighting. The alien warrior was surprised by how much thinking it took just to stand correctly. "In the fight today," Jin explained, "you got tired because you were fighting against yourself. Your own movements were working against you." "But I've won many fights," Kira protested. "Our energy blades are the most advanced weapons in the galaxy." "Close your eyes," Jin instructed. "Hold out your practice sword." Kira did as she was told. "Now, what do you feel?" "The wood. The weight. It's different from my energy blade. This has a center, a balance point." "Yes," Jin said. "Everything has a center. Every weapon, every movement, every fighter. When you know your center, you can find your opponent's center. When you find their center, you can control the fight," Kira finished, opening her eyes with sudden understanding. They practiced basic moves until the sky started to lighten. Kira was a quick learner, and Jin could see her starting to understand why the old ways still mattered. "My people think power comes from having the best technology," Kira said as they finished. "But you showed me that power can come from understanding simple things deeply." "That was your first lesson," Jin said with a small smile. "Will there be more?" Before Jin could answer, they heard voices outside. Other Ryulians were arriving for the day's challenge. Kira quickly activated her teleporter. "Wait," Jin called softly. "Why did you really come here tonight?" Kira paused. "Because when you bowed to me, it was the first time anyone treated me like I could learn something new." Then she vanished in a flash of blue light. Minutes later, Tekro appeared in the courtyard with a much larger Ryulian warrior. This one's armor had 3 gold stripes. "Your luck ends today," Tekro announced. "Meet Suril, one of our elite warriors." Jin bowed to her new opponent, hiding her tiredness from the night's secret training. As she took her stance, she saw Kira watching from among the other Ryulians. The young alien's silver eyes showed worry, but also something new: respect. "Begin," Tekro shouted, and the second challenge started with a roar of energy blades. The fight with Suril had been hard, but Jin won again. Not with fancy moves, but by staying calm and letting the big alien tire himself out. Now, 3 days after that victory, more young Ryulians started showing up at the dojo at night. Lina was the first brave one to step forward. She was even younger than Kira, with only half a silver stripe on her armor. "We want to learn," she said simply, like Kira did. Jin looked at the group of 5 young aliens. They all tried to stand tall, but she could see they were nervous. Behind them, Kira stood guard at the door, making sure no senior officers found out about these secret meetings. "Your leaders won't like this," He-Jin warned them. "We don't care," Lina said. "They keep sending warriors to beat you, and you keep winning. We want to understand why." He-Jin smiled and walked to the wall of practice swords. "Then let's begin with the basics. First, you must learn to bow." The young Ryulians were confused. "Why start with bowing?" one asked. "We came to learn fighting." "Because," He-Jin explained, "a bow shows that you're ready to learn. It shows respect, not just for me, but for yourself and what you're about to learn." Over the next few hours, He-Jin taught them the same way her grandmother had taught her. They learned how to stand, how to hold their practice swords, and most importantly, how to fall. "In our training," Lina said during a break, "they teach us that falling means failure." "Here," He-Jin replied, "we learn that falling is part of learning. Watch." She demonstrated a complex move that ended with her rolling across the floor and coming up ready to fight again. The young aliens watched with wide silver eyes. "Your way is so different," Kira said from her post by the door. "We're taught to overpower our opponents. You teach how to work with their strength instead of against it." He-Jin nodded. "Remember what I showed you about finding your center? The same idea works with an opponent's attack. Don't fight it. Guide it." As the nights went on, more young Ryulians joined the secret classes. They learned to move quietly in their metal armor, to practice the basic forms over and over until they felt natural. But they learned more than just sword moves. One night, Lina asked about the shrine in the corner. He-Jin told them about her grandmother, about family, and about passing knowledge down through generations. The aliens were fascinated. "We don't have anything like this," Lina said, looking at the old pictures. "Everything for us is about the next technology, the next weapon. We don't keep old things." "Old doesn't mean useless," He-Jin said. "Sometimes the oldest teachings are the most valuable." The young Ryulians started bringing things from their culture too. They showed He-Jin their training simulations, their battle poems, and their sacred combat rituals. The dojo became a place where two worlds met and learned from each other. But they had to be careful. Every day, the Ryulian commander sent new challengers to fight He-Jin. And every day, she won using the simple principles she was teaching their young warriors at night. One evening, Yunho caught He-Jin looking tired. "Sister, you can't keep doing this. Teaching all night and fighting all day. It's too much." He-Jin watched Lina practice a basic form with perfect focus. "Look at them, brother. They're learning more than just sword skills. They're learning that different doesn't mean wrong." "But the commanders are getting angry," Yunho warned. "I heard them talking. They're planning something big." He-Jin nodded. "I know, but we have to keep going. Grandmother always said that true change happens one person at a time." She smiled as she watched Kira helping a younger Ryulian with their stance. "And change is already happening." The sun hadn't risen yet when the Ryulian ships started moving. Their engines made the windows of the dojo shake. He-Jin was already awake, having just finished another night of secret teaching. Kira burst into the dojo, her silver eyes wide with fear. "They know. Someone told the commanders about our training sessions." Before He-Jin could respond, the air filled with blue light. Tekro appeared with 20 elite guards, their armor gleaming with gold stripes. Behind them came an even taller Ryulian whose armor was completely golden. "I am High Commander Muran," the Golden Warrior said. His voice made the wooden walls vibrate. "You have corrupted our young warriors with your primitive ideas." Kira and Lina, who were still in the dojo, stepped forward to defend He-Jin, but she gently motioned for them to stay back. "Teaching is not corruption," He-Jin said calmly. "Your warriors came to learn because they wanted to." Silence. Muran's voice boomed. "You have won your little matches, but now you face a real challenge. You will fight our top 10 warriors, one after another. If you lose even once, Earth surrenders to the Ryulian Empire." The crowd of aliens parted, revealing 10 warriors with multiple gold stripes on their armor. Each one was bigger than the last. They activated their energy blades, filling the dojo with different colored lights. Yunho ran in from the street. "Sister, the whole city is watching. They're broadcasting this everywhere." Heijin looked at her brother, then at the young Ryulians who had become her students. Finally, she looked at her grandmother's picture on the shrine. The old woman seemed to smile back at her. "And if I win?" Heijin asked. New Ran laughed, a sound like metal grinding. "If by some miracle you defeat all 10 warriors, we will leave Earth in peace." "No," Heijin said firmly. Everyone stared at her. "That's not enough. You dare to make demands." New Ran stepped forward, towering over her. "Yes." Heijin's voice was quiet but strong. "If I win, you must let any Ryulian who wants to learn our ways stay and study. And you must let us visit your worlds to share our knowledge too." The young Ryulians gasped. Even Kira looked shocked at her boldness. New Ran's silver eyes narrowed. "You think your simple tricks are worth sharing across the galaxy?" "I think understanding is always worth sharing," Heijin replied. The High Commander was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "Very well. When you lose, it will prove once and for all that your ways are worthless, and these foolish young ones will see their mistake in following you." He waved his hand, and the metal circle from the first challenge appeared in the dojo's main hall. It was bigger this time, glowing with strange patterns. "You have 1 hour to prepare," New Ran announced. "Then you face all 10 warriors. No breaks between fights. No healing time. Just you and your primitive weapon against the finest warriors in the galaxy." As the commanders disappeared, leaving only guards behind, Heijin's students crowded around her. "You can't fight them all," Lina said, worried. "Each one is a champion on their own worlds." "Master Heijin," Kira added, "even our strongest warriors need rest between matches. 10 fights in a row." Heijin walked to the shrine and picked up her grandmother's sword. "Do you remember your first lesson?" she asked them. "About finding your center." They nodded. "Today, you'll see your second lesson, how to stay true to your center, no matter how hard things get." She smiled at her worried students, both human and alien. "Now help me prepare. We have much to do in 1 hour." The hour passed too quickly. Heijin spent it doing breathing exercises her grandmother had taught her, while her students, both human and Ryulian, prepared her equipment and massaged her muscles. "First warrior, step forward." High Commander Muran's voice filled the dojo. The smallest of the 10 champions entered the glowing circle. He was still much bigger than Heijin. His energy blade glowed bright red. "Begin." The first fight was fast. Heijin let her opponent's energy blade pass harmlessly over her head as she spun low, striking his knee with the wooden end of her sword. He fell hard and couldn't get up. The second warrior used 2 energy blades at once. The air filled with green light as he attacked from both sides. But Heijin moved like water between his strikes, never meeting force with force. When he got tired, she simply pushed him out of the circle. "She's not fighting them directly," Lina whispered to Kira. "She's using their own energy against them." The third and fourth warriors came at her together, breaking the rules. But Heijin didn't complain. She moved between them so smoothly that they ended up hitting each other with their energy blades. By the 5th fight, Heijin was breathing hard. Sweat made her hands slippery on her sword's handle. This warrior was smarter than the others. He stayed back, trying to tire her out. "Remember your center," she whispered to herself, hearing her grandmother's voice in her mind. She closed her eyes for a moment, found her balance, then moved like lightning. The warrior's energy blade cut through empty air as she slipped past his guard and struck his chest with her sword's hilt. The sixth warrior lasted longer than the others. He had studied her previous fights and knew not to waste energy. But Hujin had been teaching young Ryulians for weeks now. She knew how they thought. She used moves they had never seen before, techniques saved for advanced students. He couldn't predict what he didn't understand. 7 and 8 were the hardest. Hei-jin's arms felt like lead, and her legs shook when she moved. But she remembered her students watching. She remembered Earth depending on her. Each time she wanted to give up, she found new strength. "You can't go on," Yun-ho said worriedly as she prepared for the 9th fight. "You're exhausted." "I'm not finished yet," Hei-jin said, wiping sweat from her eyes. "Grandmother always said our limits are in our minds first." The 9th warrior was huge, with scars all over his face. His energy blade was pure white and hummed so loud it hurt their ears. But Hujin saw something in how he stood, a weakness in his left leg, maybe an old injury. She had to move perfectly for her plan to work. One mistake would mean defeat. Hei-jin let him drive her back, step by step, until she was almost at the circle's edge. The warrior smiled, thinking he had her trapped. That's when she struck, a move so fast that most people missed it. Her sword hit his weak leg in exactly the right spot. The giant warrior crashed down, his energy blade shutting off as he fell. Only one warrior remained. Hei-jin could barely stand. Her vision was blurry with sweat and tiredness. But when she looked at her students, Kira, Lina, and all the others, she saw hope in their silver eyes. The last warrior stepped into the circle. He was different from the others. His armor was simple, with no stripes at all. But he moved like a master. "I am Doro," he said quietly. "I have watched all your fights. You have earned my respect." Hei-jin bowed to him, her movements slow with exhaustion. "Then let us have an honorable final match." They faced each other in the glowing circle. Hei-jin gripped her grandmother's sword with trembling hands. Everything would be decided in this last fight. Darrow activated his energy blade. It glowed blue, just like the first one she had ever seen. "Show me," he said, "why these young ones believe in you so much." The final battle began differently from all the others. Darrow didn't rush to attack like the previous warriors. Instead, he and Hei-jin circled each other slowly in the glowing ring. "You're tired," Darrow said quietly, "but you still watch my feet, not my blade." "Interesting." Hei-jin managed a small smile. "The blade goes where the feet lead." They moved like dancers, testing each other with small movements. Darrow's energy blade hummed softly as he made perfect circles in the air. Hei-jin's wooden sword stayed low, ready but patient. In the crowd, Kira whispered to Lina, "Look at their faces. They're reading each other." The first clash came suddenly. Darrow's energy blade met Hei-jin's sword with a burst of blue light. Everyone gasped. Her sword should have been cut in half, but it wasn't. "Grandmother's last gift," Hei-jin explained, seeing Darrow's surprise. "The blade is wrapped in energy-resistant metal, her way of mixing old and new." Darrow's silver eyes sparkled. "Your grandmother was wise. Like you, she knew that old and new can work together." The fight became faster. Darrow attacked with perfect technique, each move flowing into the next. But Hei-jin met him with equal skill, her tired body moving on memory and spirit now. "Watch carefully," Kira told the younger students. "They're showing us what true mastery looks like." Minutes passed. Neither fighter could gain an advantage. Then Hei-jin stumbled, her exhaustion from the previous 9 fights finally showing. Darrow saw his chance and moved in for the winning strike. But Hei-jin's stumble was a trick, the same one she had taught her students during their secret nights of training. As Darrow's blade came down, she spun inside his guard, just like she had shown them so many times. Her sword stopped just before touching his neck. At the same moment, his energy blade hovered near her side. They had caught each other. The dojo fell silent. Everyone waited to see what would happen next. Then Daro did something that shocked all the Ryulians. He switched off his energy blade and bowed to Hujin. "I understand now," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "You could have won 2 moves ago, but you chose to show me respect instead." Heijin lowered her sword and bowed back. "And you could have used your full strength to overpower me, but you chose to match my style instead." High Commander Muran stepped forward, his golden armor gleaming. "What is this? Someone must win." "No," Daro said. "Someone must learn. And today, that someone was me." He turned to face his leader. "I am the combat master of our academy. For years, I taught that newer is always better. Today, this human teacher showed me that true wisdom knows no age." One by one, the defeated warriors stood up and bowed to Hujin. Even the huge 9th warrior with his scarred face showed respect. "The agreement stands," Daro announced. "Any Ryulian who wishes to learn these ways may stay, and Earth has earned the right to share its knowledge with our worlds." Muran looked like he wanted to object, but the other warriors stood firm. Finally, he gave a short nod and vanished in a flash of light. Kira and Lina ran to Hujin, helping her stand as her strength finally gave out. "Master," Kira said excitedly, "many of us wish to stay and continue learning, and many more will come." Daro added, "I will make sure your teachings become part of our academy's training." Heijin looked around her dojo, at her human students, her alien students, and her grandmother's picture watching over them all. "Then we have much work to do," she said with a tired smile. "But first, I need a very long rest." 1 month later, the dojo was full of both human and Ryulian students training together. Where energy blades had once hummed, wooden swords now clacked against each other. Young warriors of both races bowed to each other with respect before sparring. And in the evening, when the training was done, they would sit together and listen to Hujin tell stories about her grandmother, about the importance of learning from the past, and about how the strongest bridges between peoples are built on respect and understanding. High above the dojo, the Ryulian ships still floated in the sky. But now they brought students instead of warriors, all eager to learn the lesson that Hujin had taught, that true strength comes not from defeating others, but from learning from them.